Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Larry, a pediatrician and ADHD and life coach. I'd like to welcome you this evening to our first table talk. As an experienced pediatrician and life coach, we wanted to share some information with you to ease some of the stress of this pandemic season. As the co-author of Falling Through the Ceiling, our memoir about our three sons and raising them with ADHD is a book about our experiences and the processes of raising young people. The table talks, as we had originally designed them, were to be like after a family dinner, a discussion around a table where everybody contributes and information is shared, and there's an opportunity for growth for all. Unfortunately, due to this COVID-19 season, Zoom is our best alternative. So starting this evening with the couple, the parents who are here, the Randles, who have taken their children, their twins, from kindergarten through the first year of COVID college. We'd like for them to tell their story of how they took that journey. And this evening, our moderator, Rolanda Jasper, will assist us in that process. So I'd like to turn it over to Rolanda now, and she will introduce herself and the Randles.
Well, thank you, Larry, and thank you for having us. This is a very important topic, and I know that your listeners will get a lot out of this topic. So I am Rolanda Jasper. I actually have been in healthcare for over 20 years now. And this topic is near and dear to my heart because I have sat before many companies and talked about the rising cost of ADHD drugs. So I know a lot about them and I know the importance of them. The good news is that the drug cost is actually decreasing. So that's good news. So tonight, I'd like to introduce the Randles to you, Erica and Herschell. Good evening.
Good evening.
So Erica and Herschell are working professionals. They are both leaders in their fields. Herschell is a leader in the federal government, while Erica is a leader within corporate America. So that should tell you a little bit about how busy they are and have been. So we're so delighted to have you all tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the major goal of this evening, which is to provide parents with tools to manage the organization and accountability required for successful online education in this COVID-19 season. We are in unprecedented times, would you say?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I'd like to start by asking you to share a little bit about your experience with ADHD.
Well, sure. So as Rolanda mentioned, we have a set of twins. They are age 19 now. And I have a daughter and a son. And around the age, well, I would say dating back to kindergarten, once they began school, I started to see some noticeable differences between the kids when it came to picking up simple concepts as it relates to math, reading comprehension, but still wasn't quite sure, what the issue was at that time. I attributed that to maybe a learning difference of sorts, and they do have a different way of learning. So eventually through kindergarten, first grade, I knew something was wrong, couldn't figure it out, but I made sure I put them in environments that were challenging but yet nurturing. And I did that because I wanted teachers to be able to cater to my son's learning style as well as my daughter's. But still noticing a visible difference between the two. Right around the third grade, it was just very apparent that there was a difference. My son seemed to be doing well, thriving, catching on to concepts when it came to math, reading, etc., and really thriving. Whereas my daughter, she was about halfway there, but we really had to work hard and give her that extra support to really see her way through. Third grade was a difficult yet challenging year for her, but we were able to get through it. And so after third grade, that's when I realized, I said, she finished successfully and she finished well. However, it was hard. It was really, really hard. And I had to figure out, why was this so hard? And so we were in Georgia at the time, and we moved to North Carolina for work. And I decided to put them into a public school environment for multiple reasons. One, for testing, so that we could get everything done. And then we heard that particular school system was a good school system. It was okay. It was okay. And so, but the testing and the benchmarking was great, which is what I applaud the system for. And so, even through the benchmarking, that's when I saw the noticeable differences. My son would test well. She was just not a great test taker. And so I kept waiting for the teachers to say, hey, to kind of pull my skirt to say, let's get her tested. No one ever said anything. So I pulled the trigger and said, what do I need to do to get her tested for ADHD, occupational therapy, speech therapy? I want it. You got it. Let's do it. They were pretty surprised.
Yeah. So Erica, tell me, sorry for interrupting. This piece is very critical to those who are listening. So tell me, how did you decide, how long did it take you to get to that point to start asking questions for help?
There was a combination between working with the pediatrician and the teachers, and just talking to other parents. And so, but the pediatrician said, really utilize the school system to see, to get this testing done. And so my pediatrician encouraged me to start the conversation, basically, because the referral had to come from them, and then you go back to the doctor, then they do their part, and then you come back, just to begin the process.
So prior to getting to that point where you started talking to the pediatrician, were there behaviors? I mean, did you initially think that your daughter may have needed additional tutors? What made you start talking to a pediatrician?
Well, the pediatrician at the time, she was just very detailed, asking how was he doing in school? How is she doing in school? And so we just had very open and honest conversations. But still, that we just couldn't put, it was hard to pinpoint, because my daughter is more ADD versus HD. She did not have the hyper piece. She's a very loving person. She's a people pleaser. She wants to do it. You tell her, follow the rules. But when she wasn't able to make the connection with her desire to do well, her drive with her desire, and I saw that in her. And so when speaking, with them, they just encouraged me to do this. And so I just started the process once we moved to North Carolina.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the process? So once you got support from the pediatrician and the school district, tell us about the steps you went through to get testing and so forth.
So the pediatrician completes a questionnaire. Then there's a questionnaire that is completed by I think at least one or two of her instructors. They complete their questionnaire, then it all comes back together. Then they make the determination that that she does need services. And so then after that, then there's several meetings that are set up to determine the diagnosis, and then they determine the plan that is set forth. She starts to fall under an IEP. There were services where they would initially we would pull her out of class. They would pull her out of class an hour each day to supposedly to cover concepts that she was already going over. While this seems like it was a great idea, once I started to really check in to see what that service looked like, I found that it just wasn't beneficial for my daughter. Because, and so it's really important that even though the schools are offering these services, we can't take for granted that it is the best route, for your son or daughter. And so for us, I didn't think it was the best because I didn't see an improvement in her grades and her performance. So eventually I decided to get a tutor on my own for her to work with her. And then in that process, we started to change her diet, just anything to help her to be able to focus and to be successful in school. And eventually working with that tutor, and I found someone very experienced, she said, Erica, it's just too much going on up there. It's time for us to try medication.
Very interesting.
Right.
So how did you find a good tutor?
We were blessed. We lived in a neighborhood. She was a teacher. She had 30 years of experience. She had just retired. We were lucky. We were. But that doesn't mean that any other tutoring service or business wouldn't be viable. I just knew that she needed additional help, and she was the best person for her. And she was able to, sit down with her and really work with her, and then to tell me, Erica, she just don't feed her any sugar, please, no sugar. But, and so eventually she said, try it. And I fought the medication for a minute, but I wanted to match my daughter's desire to her drive to learn. And so we put her on the medication. We got the dosing right the first time, thank goodness. And my daughter made a 360 turn.
Wow.
Her math scores went up. She received the award that year at her graduation for the highest math scores. And so, that right there made it worth everything to go through, what we needed to go through for her.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. So for the parents who are listening, are there any tips that you can share if a parent is, a little concerned about their child's progress and they're thinking that they're going down this path of ADHD or ADD, they've gotten the test, and thank you for walking us through the process for that. Tell me, how did you feel? Did you feel as though there's any stigma? There's a lot of conversation, and there has been for years, around the stigma of ADHD, ADD. How did you feel about that, and how did you overcome it if you had any concerns on that?
Sure. I view the educational system, whether I pay for it or public or private, it's a service, and it's supposed to be a partnership between ourselves and the system of your choice, private or public. And so I wasn't concerned about a stigma. I was concerned about my child being successful in her educational career and eventually launching into adulthood. That's it. I did speak to other parents who would say, oh, they were always trying to label our kids and they were trying to X, Y, Z. Okay. But the one thing about the public school system, the benchmarking tells a lot. It gives you a lot of information. If your child is unable to take a test, simple test that says, hey, this is where your child is, this is where your child should be, check in and really ask those questions as to, well, why isn't he or she testing well? Why is she not making, the best grades? What is this? This is when we have to check in. And so we have to not be afraid of those labels and those stigma and use the resources that we have in front of us. And then once you get those resources, you cannot leave it to the system, to the school to do your job. You have to stay checked in. So I gave the example of, she was being pulled out of class for an hour to go over concepts. I actually set up another meeting because they were IEP meetings. And I just said, listen, I want to see what she's doing. And to me, what the teacher or the instructor presented to me, it didn't add up. And I said, and that's when I made the decision to keep her in the classroom environment, and we'll get our own tutoring and invest in her going forward in that nature. So I just think we have a lot of resources at our fingertips that we can utilize. We cannot be afraid of stigma, fearing that our children will be labeled, but knowing that they may not launch successfully, in their career as well as into adulthood. We need to really make sure that they have a strong hold on their foundation. That foundation has to be solid before they can go anywhere else. So that was important to us.
So what were your concerns about your daughter's long-term viability? So I'd like to learn more about that, and how did you overcome that? Did you have any concerns about her continued success in school?
Absolutely. Again, much of our educational system is built on testing. You have to test well to get into college. There's always a test. So if I see that my son or my daughter, they are not able to test well, I'm seeing the anxiety, that's building up between each of them. Okay, what do we need to do? And so I'm thinking, these are hurdles that if we don't teach our kids to overcome these hurdles of anxiety or anxiousness when it comes to doing schoolwork, then once we get to middle school, and definitely by the time we get to high school, it's a wrap. And so when I saw that my daughter's reading comprehension wasn't where it should be, when I saw that her math scores weren't where it should be, in my mind, that was going to be a barrier. There was going to be a barrier. And so I wanted to do whatever we needed to do to strengthen that foundation, do the extra work, put them in summer programs, whatever we needed to do to strengthen that foundation, so, they would be successful. So.
Mm-hmm. And how did you find those? Is that how you found out what her outside interests were, by putting her into the different programs, the summer programs and such?
Well, again, I work closely with my pediatrician, and so they said to me, keep her mind going. And both of them really, but keep their mind going, keep their creative piece. I put her in dance, I put her in volleyball, I put her in art. There was always an extracurricular activity. We were very involved in our church, so that was my thing. I don't mind, no way. This is what we have to do. Let's see our time. Let's really, budget out our time. And, there was a time and place for everything. And so that's that was important to me, to make sure that they, that the creative side, as well as the mental, educational side of their brain was always active. And so we just did what we needed to do. And that also served as a motivating piece. My son loved video games, so that was his reward if he was doing well. She loved dance. She loved going out and being with her friends and being social. That was her reward, for doing well. So it worked.
Oh, that is great. That is great. So you basically, you helped her succeed by identifying what she was interested in.
Yes.
And saying, hey, if you hit this benchmark, or if you focus in on school and bring home good grades, I'm gonna support you in doing X, Y, Z.
Yes. That was it was a currency. We figured out what their currency was. For my son, also food. Food works.
We're all kind of motivated by food. Well, that's great. That's great. So I wanted to ask Herschell a question. What were your concerns about your daughter? And tell me about how you supported her success.
So, to be honest with you, Erica did majority of the work. She was always in their face. She was always there. So I started getting involved. It actually helped me from a standpoint of learning how to deal with my kids, especially my daughter, learning and reading about, her having ADD or ADHD. So it strengthened our relationship, because now, you know, I'm understanding that she thinks a little differently than my son does. So when she and I have a conversation, or when we're talking, I'm using, and you know, I'm thinking of that in the back of my head. So it really helped with our relationship, because I know I understand where she's coming from more often. You know? So my son, he's a boy. I don't know what to say. You know, sports has kind of motivated him. Sports in the games and eating, of course, right? So it was pretty easy with him. So with him, it was easy from a father-son standpoint, because I was always, you know, always in his room saying, hey, you know, just day to day, trying to get him to understand this is how life is. This is part of growing up to be a man, and that's where my job is. And same thing with my daughter. It's more of a protective role. So it was definitely a concern, and Erica and I used to have a lot of conversations about it, and she was really, I mean, she was up there, and that's the key to any parent. You have to be involved.
Yes.
You all are working together.
Yes.
So that's,
Yes.
I applaud you working together as a team. And you just said something about being that protector. And what we know about a lot of fathers, they're resistant to the medications. So how did you feel about the medications and her, you know, needing to take medication to control this issue?
She at first was kind of hesitant. She didn't want to take it. And then, you know, after multiple conversations and
your hesitation.
Well, my hesitation, to my mama hesitation?
Yeah.
Or hers?
Yours.
I didn't.
Did you have any? Did you have any hesitation to her taking medication?
I had a little. I think, you know, after I realized, or after.
He did.
Erica remembers differently.
Yeah, he did, because he's not a medication person, period. You know, we can't get him to take Tylenol. So but, and it's a good thing, seriously. But with the medication, my husband was very just black and white. A's and B's, I don't want to hear it. I don't care how you do it. Just get it. Do it. And I said, well, we have a situation here, because now we're getting closer to we're in middle school now. And now I'm starting to see, like, my daughter would study her face off for a math test. And she wasn't bad at math, because as long as it was this, she would get it. But somewhere in the midst of her anxiety, her anxiousness, it would kind of fall apart, and she just would not test well. But he, on the other hand, was here. A's and B's, where are they? I don't want to hear it. I said, well, okay. So for my son, who was not diagnosed as anything but being our son, that was the expectation. So we had to have multiple conversations of, listen, if she makes a C in math, please look at her. That's a hard-earned C she just made. I said, I am not going to hold her to an A-B standard if I don't think that if I see that she's put in the work. And that's the one thing she would do. Because she's ADHD, the one thing she would do, she would come home, Mommy, I gotta do my homework. Do my homework. And so what we had to work on her a lot of the times was equality. Did you do a great job? How were you studying? We had to build her study habits. You know, she being who she is, that executive function keep kicking in. She wanted to do it her way a lot. And so when you're ready, we'll talk about high school. But yeah, so that was that fight that we kind of had in middle school, but I did put them in a very small environment so I could work with the teachers quite well. And so when she needed more time, they gave her more time, just whatever she needed. But that's when I said, you know, I don't know if she's ever going to be an A student, a 4.0 or anything of that nature.
So she's right. That's what happened. But the thing was, what I was trying to get her to understand is, from a father's standpoint, I just had higher expectations.
He did.
I did understand that she was, you know, if she makes a C, she definitely earned it. And as we went along, I kind of backed off on the A's and B's. But it was more coming from a standpoint of, I always told them, I think you two guys should be the two smartest people in the classroom.
Yeah.
That's just the way I was thinking.
And why not? Because they came from right?
But in classes where we knew that she would flourish, absolutely. We're like, why is this not an A or B? But in classes where I knew that there would be more of a challenge, we just met her where she was, as long as we saw her doing the hard work.
And I think that's the key as well for a lot of parents who are listening, is that you saw her studying, right? But you didn't see that the results matched her effort. Exactly. So you decided, yeah, we need to work, we need to figure this out because the results are not matching the effort, right?
Exactly.
So Herschell, I'm coming back to you as the father. You know, you laughed and you smiled about your son in sports. Tell me more about how you use sports to keep your son on task.
So we tried the different sports with him as well, lacrosse and baseball and basketball, and he wanted to play football, and he ended up starting to play soccer, and after that, it was it. Yeah. He loved it. He absolutely loved it.
Found it like ding, ding, ding.
And so I had one conversation with him. I said, "You can be on the soccer team as long as you want. Mm-hmm. You need to keep those grades up." I said, "As long as your grades up," I said, "because I will pull you off, and you know I will." And never had any problems since then. It was like that was his currency.
That's wonderful. I love that. His currency. I love that. So we're coming towards the end of this before we bring Dr. Jones back in, but I think it's important to talk about their transition to college. What changes did, and this is their freshman year. They just ended their freshman year of college, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, what a year, at least the second semester that they've had. They'll probably write about this one day. But what changes did you have to make to ensure that they had a successful transition to college?
Right. So if I take a step back to high school, that's, again, the rubber hit the road, met the road when it came to high school. And so I constantly kept them getting additional tutoring. We paid for tutoring. I was blessed to also work with a lady who was a speech pathologist, but this is what she did. She worked with kids who were ADHD. And I put them in a small private environment. And almost immediately, the literature teacher said, "Hey, yeah, Erica," she gave me a recommendation, and I took it immediately. Mm-hmm. And I had her start working with the specialist. This specialist was ingrained in the school, so she worked very closely with the teacher. She worked closely with Kayla, and she worked closely with me. And this was very important because at this time she was very resistant, right? She was very resistant to the process. We tried to tell her, "Here, try studying this way." I tried her this way, but she was determined to do it her way. And then we would always say, "How's it working for you? Look at your grades. It's not working." And so the specialist we were working with, she was ADHD herself. She had a daughter who was ADHD. And so this was a passion for her. And so she came in, she worked with Kayla, she worked with the students. It was great. They fought. We loved it. We told her, "Yes, please, whatever you need to do." Because we did that additional support in our village in order for her to succeed. And, and it really ended up being a great relationship. And so with her, she taught her how to see her time more, how to use her planner, really list out what you needed to do. Kayla would have an assignment that was due in May and start working on it in January. We'd say, "No, wait, nope, stop, back up." And so she was very instrumental in that. And then even when she had her large projects, her papers, she would work with her closely. And we had to pay. We were paying tuition and we were paying for this woman. But to us, it was worth it, because it really set the foundation for her. So once she went off to college, we were nervous, but she had a lot of tools in her arsenal to utilize, and so she knew what the expectation was as well. And she did it. She finished the year. First of all, she finished her senior year at 3.5. That was a hard 3.5. Thank God. And then she finished she made the honor roll in her freshman year in college. And so we are so proud of her. We're proud of our son as well, because he learned a lot about himself through this process as well. We kept him in tutoring as well. And then also letting them know, like, tutoring and help, that's not for people who are doing bad. It's for people who are doing well and want to continue to do well.
Absolutely.
I'm like, please, and then helping them to pull on those resources. You know, she learned in her freshman year, build that relationship with her teacher. Sometimes that turned a C into a B, because they were like, you know what, you were on time for class all the time. You were this, you were that. And so she is really pulling on all of that foundation. And we just hope and pray that she would continue. She's determined to graduate in 4 years. I'm like, hey, we're like, great, we want that. But if it takes a little bit longer, we're okay. I just refuse to put so much pressure on her, so she'll fail. So, and then, do you want me to talk about freshman year, how I worked with her with the class?
I think that would be great.
Okay, and I'll be quick. And so we worked with her with her classes. I really didn't want her to be overwhelmed with taking her science, her biology with the math, because I knew that those would, for her, that would be more of a challenge. And so we've worked with her, even making her schedule for this upcoming fall, you know, with making sure that she had a very balanced schedule. And I told her, I said, if it takes us longer because we're doing this, so you're not as stressed out, let's do it. And she's on board. I even work closely with the advisor. I know that, you know, she's 18, 19, I'm a parent, but that support is still needed. You know, we're backing off. We're not helicoptering at nearly as much, but when helping her to balance her schedule so she will be successful. So I think just as a parent, we still need to just stay just a little bit more checked in, you know, through those college years, if we don't see that they fully have it. So
that is awesome. I would tell you what I heard you say is involvement is one of the keys. You know, being a true parent, right? Looking at your kids, seeing them actually do the work, and as I mentioned before, you know, the results are not matching the efforts, and then having that question in your mind, communicating with the professors, their teachers, that is. Also communicating with the pediatrician. That is very key, because the pediatrician will know to look for these cues, right? And so what you did there is just awesome. And then taking the advice and researching yourself and staying involved along the way. And you and your husband working as a team, along with your son, who is not diagnosed with ADD, but everyone working as a team, no I in team, right? To help with success. And it sounds as though the other thing is, you know, helping your daughter stay motivated, identifying what, you know, her currency, and then utilizing that to help her be successful, which has created a foundation to help her stay motivated in college, right?
Yes.
All these tools that she's learned along the way. And by the way, I think all of these things that I just identified and you just shared are just tools for life.
Absolutely.
For any of us, right?
Absolutely.
So I applaud you, parents, for continuing to focus and continuing to believe and continuing. Communication is always the key.
Absolutely.
Yes. Congratulations. So Dr. Jones, I thought this was a great conversation with parents who really understand what you and your wife have written about. And I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Rolanda. For those of us who were not part of our audience today, and you have questions about this presentation, please reach out to me at Dr. Larry at tasteofsuccesscoaching.com, or on Facebook at Taste of Success Coaching. We hope that you have enjoyed this presentation about building your child's educational village, that it's been useful to you as we approach the opening of school for this year and beyond. We want to thank our guests, Erica and Herschell Randle, for explaining what they did to make their children successful in college, particularly in light of this COVID season, and with that ADH gift that they have. So we thank you again for the work that you've done and for sharing that information with us today. And I especially wanted to thank them again for the opportunity to be able to coach their twins. It's been a real pleasure for me to talk and get to know them as exciting and motivated young people. And of course, thanks to our moderator, Rolanda Jasper, for really pushing the conversation along and getting the details from the Randles that I think will help any parent as they continue on this journey of building your child's educational village. Now, our next table talk will be the Twice Exceptional Learner. And we'll put out information on our social media, and if you'll put that slide up again for you to reach out. And if you can also reach out to me at my email, drlarry@tasteofsuccesscoaching.com, to get invitations to that next table talk. Yeah. And we look forward to talking with you again, and thank you for joining us this evening.